just around 6 p.m., they do they get sighted, and even BT at that moment, who had already paused in that run up north to lay down smoke screen and make repairs, he actually turns to the right and starts sailing east because his battle cruisers do let out a lot of smoke. And where we left off is at that moment, the front ships of Admiral Scheer, they sight Jellicoe's battle fleet moving in formation because he's organized his ships ready for action. And it's gonna be quite scary. It's like that scene from Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, when the British fleet just comes out. But if you just imagine 28 dreadnoughts coming your way, yeah, that's pretty scary if you ask me.
It's a pretty
But
good analogy.
I mean,
Just with
I'd
the
be pretty scared.
bigger ships.
I'd be pretty scared. I don't know about you guys. Now, one thing we should also keep in mind with Jutland, right, is it's a naval battle, right? Now, generals on the land, if they make a mistake or such, they have to plan a proper withdrawal, and also are obsessed about holding land, right? Like that is exactly why we had the entire stalemate on the Western Front and the Isonzo fronts. Simon, we should probably play someday again, go picking.
Yeah.
But on the sea, that dynamic completely changes. It's a featureless landscape. There are no mountains, there's no hills, there's no ravines, rivers to demarcate zones. So if a guy just doesn't want to fight, he can just, freely disengage more easily than it is to extract a few divisions of soldiers, right? But one of the biggest problems that was on this day was the visibility. Here, both ships, their big guns can engage each other at ranges of 10 to 11,000 yards effectively, or even up to 13, 14,000 yards, and ranging shots even start at 80,000 yards. The visibility at this time, at around 6 p.m. on 31st May, was limited to about 5,000 yards. So this is going to be one of the big reasons that a lot of decisions that Scheer and Jellicoe make, it's going to be affected by this fog of war. Now, at around 6 p.m. when Jellicoe is starting to arrive, the 5th Battle Squadron and BT, right, as you can see here, these blue lines, they start to turn to re-engage with the Germans. So from about 4:45 p.m., those guys were running north to rendezvous with Jellicoe, and now that they're ready. Now, and it is also at the same time the scouting Hipper's battle cruisers, which because right now it's only been really the battle cruisers that have been doing the fighting. And despite not yet losing a ship, Hipper's ships have taken a pretty brutal beating. I think a few of them were even at one point, I think it was the Sidelets, I think, which had only just one operational turret left at this point. And it had already taken on a few thousand tons of water. So it's not like they've escaped completely unscathed as well. Now, at around 6 p.m., as Jellicoe, you can see, is entering, Hipper does turn back to join with Scheer. And, that is when at 6 p.m., BT in his ship HMS Lion, which is his flagship, he sights the Iron Duke, which is Jellicoe's flagship. Iron Duke being named after the Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wellesley, which I'm quite proud to say is the founder of my college, King's College, London. Now, the reason Jellicoe was approaching pretty slowly was he had been demanding updates from BT about the position of the enemy. This is because a foul up in the intelligence that was sent wirelessly from the Admiralty to Jellicoe earlier in the battle, which is proven false, it completely destroyed the trust that Jellicoe would have in such reports. So he was relying on BT and the cruiser captains and such to give him all the sighting information so that they can then plot their course. So because of this and the limited visibility, he is like kind of like, he doesn't know what to really do. And he wants to know the location of the German fleet because what he wants to do is come in a battle line crossing their T, right? So that he is able to deliver broadsides where the Germans are not able to, and also cut off their retreat. Because at this point, also, they have several options on how they could disengage. And if they reach back to the safety of their minefields, he's not going to pursue them any further. However, if he deploys his fleet too early, and it's in the wrong direction, he's compromised. But if he continues in a sailing formation, he's not, fully ready to commit. So, it's this big juggling act that they have to take. Now, what ends up happening is he is moving in a southerly direction. And then as he's moving down, right, he does see that BT and the Queen Elizabeth, the British 5th Battle Squadron under Evan Thomas, are already now engaging with the vanguard of Scheer's fleet. Now, and these two guys do try to take position at the head of Jellicoe's fleet so that they are again the vanguard. And now we see a case of classic miscommunication happening. Evan Thomas assumed that as Jellicoe comes south, his fleet would move to come down and turn to starboard. That is, they will turn in a westerly direction, and then he will be in the lead. But what ends up happening is Jellicoe turns to the port side and moves in a more easterly direction, which also then, puts him at the rear guard. And at the same time, not all the ships are completely receiving the messages that, okay, this is the turn we have to execute. And they're not turning in unison. So that leads to a slowdown in speed because they're trying to avoid not ramming into each other. Keep in mind, while there are like 30, 35 capital ships of the British, there are also like 120 smaller ships darting around between them. Not good for them. Now, it is at this time the 5th Battle Squadron does take a bit of a blow, is when HMS Warspite is turning in, like because she's bringing up the rear of the 5th Battle Squadron line. She gets hit by a shell which jams her rudder, and for a good amount of time, um, you know, she is actually just going to be turning in circles. It's not going to be visible on this map, just that one ship's decision and like one ship's movements. But Captain Philpotts decided to maintain course, right? Because he doesn't want to stop the Warspite. He wants to continue. So it takes two, turns in a circle before they got her under control. But at this time, she was the main target for the Germans, and they hit her several times.
We also have to keep in mind that the rudders are like one of the key weaknesses of these ships. So if you hit the rudder and it stops moving, you cannot do anything because you lose control of your movement.
That is why, but he wanted to at least keep moving, Captain Philpotts, sorry, so that at least it's a moving ship is at least a bit, even if it's moving in a circle, is a bit harder to hit than a stationary
standing
ship.
still is makes you a far easier target than moving, even if it is predictable.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, there was a British armored cruiser that had just been hit earlier, the cruiser Warrior, and it had been damaged by the leading dreadnoughts, and they actually believed that Warspite was doing this deliberately to save the ship, and they were like, the crew felt a great deal of gratitude and debt to Warspite, and so the the rangefinders could only use the A turret of Warspite. So British turrets at this time on the capital ships were labeled as A, B, Q, and X. A is the foremost, B is behind, so they are the front of the ship, right? The four. Then you'll have the main superstructure, then you have the Q turret, and then you have the X turret. At this time, Warspite was so badly damaged, only the A turret was functioning. And then I think it was around 6:45 or so that they regained control. And despite the captain and crew wanting to stay in by, they were down to speed that they were ordered out of the battle zone. And by 9 p.m., Warspite was gone. So one of the Queen Elizabeths has been knocked out of the fight, but it's not going to sink, and we do know she's going to serve in World War II. So it's not really a spoiler, but she's not one of the ships that's going to be lost. Now, at 6:17, Jellicoe's fleet finally sights here, and they open fire somewhere around at a distance of about 15,000 yards. It was the HMS Marlborough, which was the first British dreadnought to open fire on Scheer's fleet, named after Winston Churchill's great ancestor, the Duke of Marlborough. Now, however, at this point, because of the confusion in the maneuvering and low fog, only 1/3 of the British ships are even able to see and fire on the German fleet. And this is made worse because, as you can see in this light blue line over here, because BT is trying to get across and be at the vanguard of Jellicoe's line, the smoke coming out of several cruisers and battle cruisers, it's adding to the fog of war. And this actually forces Jellicoe to make the decision that his fleet should slow down to 14 knots. So I think 14 knots, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is a speed of about 26 kilometers per hour. Now, it's quite slow, and only some of the ships get that order from Jellicoe that, slow down. So there ends up being a lot of maneuvering and near crashes per down. Now, it is at this moment we have the British 3rd Battle Cruiser Squadron come in. And this is part of Jellicoe's fleet. Now, why does Jellicoe have 3 battle cruisers? It was a decision made prior to the war where, in exchange for 4 Queen Elizabeths of the 5th Battle Squadron, the battle cruisers of BT would move up to Scapa Flow and use the gunnery ranges there to better hone their skills because they had better facilities to train the men better. Now, this battle cruiser squadron of 3 battle cruisers, which are the Indefatigable, sorry, I think I mixed up the names. Just one moment. Yeah, it is the battle cruisers HMS Invincible, Inflexible, and Indomitable. You gotta really like these British names, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I know. The British are such trolls with the way they name their ships.
And this is a guy that actually does have a slight relation. So this is Rear Admiral Sir Horace Lambert Alexander Hood, who also gets the nickname the Horn Horace Hood. He is actually from a pretty distinguished naval family.